Hi all, in this video I will be explaining REST template at Spring Boot application. I will be using Spring Boot 3.3.4 and Java 17, Postman, IntelliJ and external weather API. So I will be covering the below concept like what is REST template, and I will be explaining you its use case in the real life application. I will create a simple Spring Boot application with a Spring Initializer, and I will explain you the REST templates, different method and its practical use case. Then I will demonstrate how we are consuming REST API from the external service or the external client, as well as I will be using some internal client. For the external client, I will be using external weather API, and I will demonstrate those using a simple Spring Boot application. Lastly, we will discuss whether we can use web client instead of REST template or not. So let's get started. So before moving ahead with the video, I will request you please subscribe to the channel to get videos on Spring Boot, Java microservices, REST API and similar software development concept. So let's get started. So what is a REST templates? So REST templates is used to consume any external API or internal API. But why the REST template is required? So let's understand by taking one of the example. For example, you are making an application where you need services from the external client. For example, you have a food delivery app. So and you want to have the location details from external source. You don't need to implement those in your code. You can use external API, and even with the secret key and other authentication details, you can use those API. So that is one of the concept of using REST template. For example, in your organization, the 2, 3 or more than one services are communicating each other. For example, service want to consume the API from the service 2. So there you can use the REST templates. Similarly, you can talk between the application using the REST template. You can update, put, fetch, so on. So let's create a simple project. I will use Spring Initializer, Java language and Maven project. I will use 3.3.4, group ideas, com.lib, REST template, REST template, REST template demo project. I'll be using jar packaging and 17 version. So to work with this REST template, I just need a Spring Web dependency. I will generate this project and I will open in IntelliJ. I have extracted the REST template project. I will open form.xml and I will add as Maven project. Let the dependency be loaded and it import all to our local system. The packages are imported successfully. I will extract the source Java and REST template application. So now I will be creating a simple user entity having ID or name. So for that I will create a simple package called model. In this model I will create a Java class called user. So user class has been created with ID and name as a two fields. Then I will create one controller class. So before that I will create packages controller. On that I will use user controller class. I have created one of the endpoint called single user, and I have added the value as 1 and deep. So why I am creating is that, so I have created this simple API and it will provide as a response. So this is our internal service. I will create a different API. I will create a second API where I will be calling this single user, that is called consuming internal services or the internal client using REST template. So I will show that part also. So to do that, I need to create a bin of REST template in this application files. I have created a simple bin with this template as a singleton class. Then I will create a different controller where I will be calling this single user API. So before that, let me run the application and I will hit this API and will check what response is coming. So build is completed successfully and application also run successfully with 8080 port. So I will hit this single user API. I will open Postman. I will use localhost 8080 single user. So it is a GET API. I will click on send. We'll check what response is coming. So as ID and deep, this response is coming. So it is one of the API. So I will create a different API where I will be consuming this API with the help of REST template. So I have created an API called single user from internal service where I will be using this API. So for that I need to auto add the REST template. So I will use auto add. Before that I will stop the application. Auto add private REST template object. So I will call this external API. So for that I need to do REST template dot. So there is lot of method that present on REST API. I will take some time to explain you about few of this method. So I will open the official documentation of REST templates. So I will be using the get API because this is the get method and we will be using get for object or get for entity. So let's search for those method get for object. So if you see that get for object, get for an entity, and those details are is there. Retrieve an entity by doing get on the specified URL. So the URL you need to pass, you need to pass as a response type for this. And there is other post method also, post for entity, then delete is there. You can explore this official documentation. So I will use get for object. So if we check this, so get for object retrieve a representation by doing get on the URL. So by doing get on the URL means we need to specify this URL and then response type if any. So REST template dot get for object. If you see that on pop-up is coming URL and the response type. So for example, the URL will provide and the response type. So we'll pass this as a user response. So response type will be user dot class, and I will store it on the user object. So to mention this URL, I will create a package called constant where all the constant things will be there. I will also create a class called app constant. I have pasted that internal URL. So I'll go to this user controller class. So in URL, I will pass this as internal client URL and I will import it. So I run the application and I will hit this API. So that means it will call internally this single user. So that is the internal call, and after a few minutes I will be using the external call using the weather API. So please subscribe to the channel if you are still watching the video. So let's go ahead with the video. I run the application. So application is started successfully. So I will hit this API. This API nothing is implemented. It is calling the above API using the concept of REST template. So I will go to Postman and I will hit single user from internal server. So I got the response. So that means the internal part is working. Now we need to understand how we will be using some external API or the external service API. So for that we have some API or some contract. So I will use free web stack, free weather API. So I have this website. You can create an account and you can get this API key. So this is the API. They have provided API dot current access key. I will somehow modify this API. If you see that I have modified this API with access key and query. So and this will I will pass from the API. So I will create a third API on this user controller class where I will consuming this weather API. That I will hit that API and I will show what type of response we are getting. So this is the API. I will click on the send. So this is the response we are getting. We are getting request, location, current, some other information. For example, this is the external API and we want to take this particular location section and we want to use in our internal service. So for that we need to have this location project class and the project class for weather. So I will create those two. So I have created a location project class with all the details and getter setter method. You can just do this generate and getter setter will be generated. So as I mentioned, I need to create an weather project class also having this location and few other details, because if we check there are request entity is there, location entity is there, current entity is there, but we want to have this location entity only. So for this only we have used location, and for example this location we want to use in our user class. So for that we need to create a location entity here, private location and location. We need to create a getter setter for this location. Generate getter setter. Now this part is ready. Now we need to go to this user controller class and we'll create a third API to consume those location information. So let me create that part also. So I have created a separate get method with get user from external service, and where we'll pass the city name and we'll get those details. So there is REST API and using get for object, and it will map with weather class. So if we click on this weather have the location, then it will convert to location. Let's go to class. So weather information is there, and the user we need to set with location. From the weather we want to have this location only. So I will run the application and hit this API get single user from external service slash city. So let's run the application. So the application is started successfully. So I will hit this API single user from external service. So go to Postman single user from external service slash city name as Bangalore. The city is there now, so we are using the same thing slash city. So I will click on the send. So it is internally calling this external API, and we see that information is there. ID and name is already there, and this location part we are getting from the external service. So if we hit this those other two API, this API will just return these two fields. So if we hit that also, single user, it is location is null because we are not passing anything here, and get from internal service will give us none only. So yeah, so that's all. Please subscribe to the channel to get videos on Spring Boot microservices, and please share the feedback. Thank you for watching the video.